The annals of World War II are filled with the names of great generals and celebrated battles. Yet some of the most crucial conflicts were waged in the shadows, far from the front lines. This is the untold story of one such warrior, a woman whose courage and intellect posed a silent but devastating threat to the Nazi war machine. While armies clashed on the beaches of Normandy and the deserts of Africa, she engaged in a different kind of warfare, one of deception and secrets, where a single misstep meant not just capture, but torture and execution. Her name was Elara Voss, though the Nazis knew her by many aliases, a phantom haunting their intelligence apparatus. Operating under the very noses of the Gestapo, she became a legend whispered about in resistance safe houses and feared in the corridors of SS headquarters. Her story, buried for decades in classified files, is a testament to the power of one individual to alter the course of history through sheer force of will and unparalleled cunning, a narrative of espionage that redefines our understanding of the war's hidden dimensions. Our story begins not in the field, but in the hallowed halls of academia. Before the war, Elara Voss was a brilliant linguist and cartographer at a prestigious European university, a woman known for her sharp mind and photographic memory. When the Nazi shadow fell across the continent, she was recruited not by her own country's fledgling intelligence service, but by a clandestine international network of anti-fascist intellectuals. They recognized that her unique skills were a weapon waiting to be unleashed. She could flawlessly mimic regional dialects, decipher complex codes, and redraw stolen maps from memory. Her training was brutal and swift, transforming the scholar into a spy. She learned the dark arts of sabotage, silent killing, and the intricate tradecraft of dead drops and covert signals. This metamorphosis from academic to operative was complete when she was given her most daring mission, to infiltrate the very heart of the enemy's command structure in occupied Paris, posing as a sympathetic Swiss socialite with pro-German sympathies, a role she would play with chilling perfection for years. The Paris into which Elara Voss descended was a city of stark contrasts. Beneath the surface glamour imposed by its Nazi occupiers lay a festering world of fear, resistance, and desperation. The Champs-Élysées were patrolled by German soldiers, their jackboots a constant reminder of the subjugation. It was in this pressured environment that Elara, now known as the Countess von Strauss, established her cover. She rented a lavish apartment near the Arc de Triomphe and began a carefully orchestrated campaign of social infiltration. She attended high society parties at the Ritz, rubbing shoulders with high-ranking Wehrmacht officers and corrupt French officials. Her charm was her greatest asset, disarming even the most suspicious of SS colonels. She became a fixture in their world, a beautiful, seemingly apolitical confidant who listened to their boasts and their troubles over glasses of fine champagne, all the while mentally cataloging every scrap of information, every careless word that could be turned against them. Elara's primary objective was to penetrate the German communications hub located within the former French Ministry of Defense. This fortress-like building was the nerve center for all military telegraph and radio traffic in Western Europe. The intelligence that flowed through its basement was priceless. Troop movements, U-boat positions, and details of the feared V-weapon programs. Gaining physical access seemed an impossible task. Her breakthrough came not through force, but through perceived vulnerability. She began a calculated romantic relationship with a high-ranking signals officer, Colonel Klaus Richter, a lonely, middle-aged man captivated by her beauty and apparent fragility. She played the part of the damsel in distress, claiming to be harassed by French resistance fighters, subtly guiding him to suggest she use his office as a safe haven during the day. It was a masterstroke of psychological manipulation, preying on his paternal instincts and vanity to unlock the most heavily guarded door in Paris. Within weeks, Elara had her pass. She would spend her afternoons in the antechamber of Richter's office, ostensibly reading novels or writing letters to fictional relatives. In reality, she was conducting a meticulous audit of the security protocols. She noted the guards' rotation schedules, the make and model of the cipher machines, and the times when the communication room was at its busiest. Using a compact mirror concealed in her powder compact, she observed the technicians at work, memorizing the sequences they used to operate the complex Enigma and Lorenz machines. She risked everything by discreetly sketching the internal layout of the communications floor on scraps of silk she hid in the lining of her handbag. This was intelligence gathering of the highest order, a slow, painstaking assembly of a puzzle whose final picture will provide the Allies with an unprecedented window into Hitler's war plans. The information Elara gathered was useless unless it could be transmitted to London. This required a perilous alliance with the fractured French resistance. Using a complex system of chalk marks and coded messages left in classified ads, she made contact with Clement, the leader of a small, highly disciplined cell. Their meetings were tension exercises, conducted in the back rooms of butcher shops or in the shadowy recesses of the Père Lachaise cemetery. Trust was a commodity in short supply. A single betrayal meant death for everyone involved. Elara would pass her microfilmed reports or memorized data to Clement, who would then dispatch couriers on treacherous journeys across the Pyrenees. The methods were primitive but effective: hollowed-out loaves of bread, false-bottomed wine bottles, and messages written in invisible ink on seemingly innocent laundry lists. Every handoff was a potential trap. Every moment spent in the open, an eternity of fear. The Gestapo was not idle. They knew a leak of monumental proportions was hemorrhaging information from the Paris command. A specialist, the notoriously ruthless Sturmbannführer Erich Drexler, was dispatched from Berlin to plug the leak. Drexler was a master of counterintelligence, a man who saw conspiracy in every shadow and trusted no one. He instituted a regime of paranoid scrutiny, conducting random raids, planting misinformation, and deploying a small army of informants. He immediately viewed the social circles surrounding the high command with suspicion, and Elara's proximity to Colonel Richter made her a person of interest. Drexler began to subtly test her cover, arranging seemingly chance encounters where he would question her about her past, her family in Switzerland, and her political opinions, each query a razor-sharp probe designed to find a crack in her meticulously constructed facade. The net began to tighten dramatically when a resistance courier, captured at a checkpoint, broke under torture and gave up the description of a beautiful woman with a scarab brooch who provided the intelligence. Elara always wore such a brooch, a gift from Richter. Drexler now had his target. He ordered around-the-clock surveillance on her, with 2 plainclothes agents following her every move. Elara, trained to sense the slightest shift in her environment, noticed the tale almost immediately. The game had changed. She was now a mouse being toyed with by a cat. She could not break her routine without raising alarm, nor could she risk contacting Clement. She was trapped in a gilded cage, forced to continue her charade while the walls closed in. Every social function a potential confrontation, every smile a mask hiding sheer terror. Knowing she was under observation, Elara devised a breathtakingly audacious plan. She would use the Nazi zone's surveillance against them. She deliberately led her followers on a convoluted route through Parisian department stores and crowded cafes, using reflections in windows and sudden changes in direction to identify every agent on her tail. She then engineered a chance meeting with Drexler himself at an art gallery. Feigning a nervous breakdown, she confessed to him that she believed she was being followed by French partisans and begged for his protection. This brilliant act of reverse psychology disarmed Drexler's suspicions momentarily. He saw not a cunning spy, but a frightened socialite. He publicly called off the overt surveillance, believing a more subtle approach was needed, a critical error in judgment that gave Elara the breathing room she desperately needed. With the immediate pressure alleviated, Elara knew she had to strike a decisive blow before Drexler could devise a new trap. She had learned from Richter of a massive, impending German counter-offensive plan for the Ardennes forest, an operation that would later be known as the Battle of the Bulge. The details, the troop concentrations, the timing, the specific panzer divisions involved, were in a single, highly classified operations binder in Richter's personal safe. The safe's combination was the final barrier. One evening, while Richter was distracted by a phone call from Berlin, she watched his fingers as he dialed the lock, memorizing the sequence by the subtle pauses between the clicks. The information was now within her grasp, but extracting it would be the most dangerous moment of her life. The opportunity came during a lavish party Richter was hosting at his official residence. The sound of clinking glasses and orchestral music from downstairs provided the perfect acoustic cover. Pleading a migraine, Elara retreated to Richter's private study upstairs. With steady hands, she dialed the combination she had memorized. The safe doors swung open with a soft sigh. Inside lay the binder. Using a miniature camera no larger than a matchbox, she photographed every page, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The process took 20 agonizing minutes. Every footstep in the hallway, every burst of laughter from below, felt like a prelude to discovery. She worked with mechanical precision, her training overriding her fear, knowing that the fate of thousands of Allied soldiers rested on her success in that silent, book-lined room. The film secured in a hidden compartment of her brooch, Elara closed the safe and rejoined the party, her face a mask of serene composure. But the night's perils were not over. Drexler, his instincts still nagging at him, had been watching her. He cornered her on a balcony, his tone deceptively casual as he questioned the length of her absence. With ice in her veins, she spun a tale of feminine troubles, her performance so convincing that even the suspicious Drexler was forced to retreat with a stiff apology. It was a narrow escape, a testament to her incredible poise under pressure. She had the information, but now she had to get it to London. The normal channels were compromised. She would have to make the delivery herself, a journey that would take her deep into the heart of the Nazi occupation. Elara's escape plan was as daring as her espionage. Using a prearranged signal, a specific flower arrangement in her apartment window, she alerted Clement that she was making a run for it. She could not simply disappear. That would confirm her guilt and trigger a massive manhunt. Instead, she staged her own kidnapping. One evening, as her car pulled up to her apartment, Clement's men, disguised as Gestapo agents, arrested her in a violent public spectacle. The ruse was designed to mislead Drexler, making him believe a rival agency or the resistance had captured his prime suspect. The genuine Gestapo was thrown into confusion, buying Elara precious hours as she was whisked away to a safe house on the outskirts of Paris, her transformation from countess to fugitive now complete. In the damp, cold cellar of the safe house, Elara shed the last vestiges of her identity. The elegant dresses and jewelry were replaced with the drab, rough-spun clothes of a peasant woman. Her hands were deliberately dirted, and her perfectly coiffed hair was hidden under a ragged scarf. The film containing the Ardennes offensive plans was sewn into the hem of her skirt. Her new mission was to travel over 300 miles to a coastal town in Brittany, where a British submarine would perform a high-risk nocturnal extraction. The journey would be made on foot and by sporadic, unreliable rural trains through countless German patrols and checkpoints. She was now just one of millions of displaced persons, her survival dependent on her ability to blend into the bleak landscape of occupied France. The trek across the French countryside was a harrowing ordeal of endurance and constant vigilance. Elara joined the streams of refugees, her story one of a widow fleeing the fighting in the east. She slept in barns and ditches, foraged for food, and navigated using the stars. At every bridge and crossroads, there were Wehrmacht checkpoints. She witnessed the brutal randomness of Nazi occupation, arbitrary arrests, summary executions. She kept her eyes downcast, her posture slumped, the very picture of war-weary exhaustion. Inside, however, her mind was razor-sharp, assessing threats, memorizing patrol patterns, and always protecting the secrets stitched into her clothing. The weight of the intelligence she carried was a heavier burden than any physical fatigue. The final leg of her journey involved crossing a region notorious for its dense German patrols, tasked with preventing exactly this kind of coastal escape. Guided by a young resistance fighter named Jean, Elara moved only under the cover of darkness, using animal trails through thick forests. One moonless night, they stumbled upon a German patrol. A firefight erupted in the inky blackness, the staccato bursts of machine gun fire shattering the silence. Jean sacrificed himself, drawing the German fire while shouting for Elara to run. She plunged into a freezing river, clinging to the roots on the far bank as soldiers searched the area with flashlights, their beams slicing through the darkness just feet above her head. She held her breath until her lungs burned, a human statue in the icy water. Miraculously evading the patrol, Elara, now alone, exhausted, and grieving for Jean, finally reached the designated cove. The extraction was set for the following night. She hid in a sea cave, shivering and hungry, watching the German E-boats patrol the coastline. As dusk fell, she saw the signal, 3 flashes from a lantern out at sea. Her heart leapt. She responded with 3 flashes from her own small electric torch. The long, dark shape of the British submarine surfaced silently in the swells. A small rubber dinghy was deployed, rowing towards the rocky shore with urgent, silent strokes. Freedom was within sight, a tangible presence on the salt-tinged air. Just as the dinghy reached the shore, the roar of a vehicle engine echoed from the cliff tops. A German patrol, alerted by a suspicious fisherman, had arrived. A searchlight beam swept across the cove, momentarily blinding her. Shouts in German rang out, followed by the first crack of rifle fire. The submariners in the dinghy returned fire with a Thompson submachine gun. In the chaos, Elara waded into the freezing surf, the waves pulling at her legs. Strong hands hauled her aboard the flimsy craft as bullets kicked up plumes of water around them. They rowed furiously back towards the waiting sub, the shouts of the Germans fading behind them as they were swallowed by the protective darkness of the open sea. Aboard the HMS Vanguard, Elara was treated not as a spy, but as a hero. Wrapped in a blanket, she sipped naval cocoa while debriefing a stunned MI6 officer. The film was immediately dispatched to London via secure channels. The intelligence she provided, particularly the detailed plans for the Ardennes offensive, was nothing short of war-altering. Allied commanders, forewarned and forearmed, were able to strategically reposition forces, bolster their defenses, and ultimately blunt the spearhead of Hitler's last great gamble in the West. The Battle of the Bulge would still be a brutal and costly conflict, but without Elara's warning, the outcome could have been a catastrophic reversal for the Allies, potentially prolonging the war by many months. Back in Paris, the aftermath of her escape was pandemonium. SS Sturmbannführer Drexler was incandescent with rage, his career in tatters. He interrogated a heartbroken and bewildered Colonel Richter, who was ultimately reassigned to the Eastern Front in disgrace. The Countess von Strauss became a phantom, a symbol of Nazi humiliation. Drexler knew with a chilling certainty that he had been outmaneuvered by a master, a woman whose name he never even learned. The security apparatus in Paris was completely overhauled, but the damage was done. The legend of the unknown spy grew within the resistance. The story of hope and defiance passed from cell to cell, a spark of light in the long, dark night of occupation. In London, Elara Voss was debriefed extensively. The brass wanted to send her to a safe house for the remainder of the war, to protect their invaluable asset. She refused. Having seen the horrors of the occupation firsthand, she could not rest while the fight continued. Using her unparalleled knowledge of the German command structure and its personalities, she worked from a desk in Whitehall, analyzing intercepted communications and helping to plan deception campaigns. Her insights were instrumental in feeding false information back to the Nazis, misleading them about Allied invasion plans and sowing discord within their ranks. Her war was no longer fought in drawing rooms, but in the intricate web of signals intelligence. As the Allies pushed eastward after D-Day, Elara's knowledge became crucial for the denazification and intelligence efforts in the newly liberated territories. She helped identify war criminals hiding among refugees, interpreted captured documents, and provided psychological profiles of key Nazi officials who were now fugitives. She walked through the ruins of cities she had known in their grandeur, a somber witness to the final, devastating cost of the tyranny she had fought so hard to undermine. There was no sense of triumph in this work, only a grim determination to ensure that the seeds of such evil could never again take root, to bring whatever closure and justice she could to a broken continent. When the war in Europe finally ended, Elara Voss disappeared once more, this time by choice. She rejected all medals and public recognition, understanding that her value and her safety lay in anonymity. The world celebrated the end of the conflict, but for many in the Shadow War, peace was a complex and private affair. She moved to a quiet cottage in the Scottish Highlands, where she took up her old passion for cartography, mapping not military positions, but the serene and unchanging landscapes of her new home. The ghosts of Paris, of Richter, of Jean, and of Drexler would always be with her, but she found a fragile peace in the silence of the moors and the steady, methodical work of her hands. The full extent of Elara Voss's contributions remained classified for over 50 years, buried in archives marked with the highest levels of secrecy. It was only with the declassification of certain MI6 files in the late 1990s that historians began to piece together the incredible story of the Sparrow, her codename. Biographers and journalists sought her out, but the elderly, reclusive woman they found had little interest in revisiting her past. She granted one single, brief interview, stating, "I did not do it for glory or for history. I did it because it was the only thing a decent human being could do." Her modesty only added to the profound legend that was slowly emerging from the dust of old files. Historians now agree that the intelligence provided by Elara Voss shortened the war in Europe by a significant margin. The prevention of a complete strategic surprise in the Ardennes alone saved tens of thousands of Allied lives. Her infiltration of the Paris command provided a continuous stream of verified, high-level intelligence that was second to none. She was, in the words of one modern analyst, a one-woman ultra program, her work complementing and confirming the code-breaking efforts at Bletchley Park. Her story forces a re-evaluation of the espionage war, highlighting the indispensable role of human courage and intelligence in an age increasingly dominated by technology and machines. What set Elara apart was not just her courage, but her profound understanding of human psychology. She was a master manipulator, not through coercion, but through empathy. She understood the loneliness of Colonel Richter, the ambition of Drexler, the fears and vanities of the Nazi elite. She weaponized their own personalities against them, crafting a persona that fulfilled their emotional needs while systematically dismantling their security. This psychological warfare, waged in quiet conversations and stolen glances, was as lethal as any bomb or bullet. Her legacy is a case study in the art of intelligence, a reminder that the strongest fortifications can be breached not by force, but by understanding the human mind. The story of Elara Voss is also a story of the often overlooked contributions of women in warfare. While denied a place on the front lines, women like Elara fought in a theater where the stakes were just as high and the dangers just as immediate. They operated without the support structure of a uniformed military, facing interrogation, torture, and execution if captured. Their weapons were their wit, their resilience, and their ability to remain invisible. Elara's saga stands as a powerful testament to this hidden army of women who served as couriers, saboteurs, and spies, fundamentally altering the course of the conflict from the shadows. Today, as the last veterans of that great conflict pass into history, the tale of the spy who outsmarted the Nazis endures as a timeless narrative of resistance. It is a story that transcends its historical moment, speaking to the power of the individual to stand against overwhelming evil. In an age of renewed global uncertainty, her example of quiet courage, intellectual rigor, and moral clarity resonates more strongly than ever. She reminds us that heroism does not always wear a uniform, that the pen and the mind can be as mighty as the sword, and that the battle for freedom is often won by those whose names we never know. In her final years, Elara was said to have found solace in her garden, tending to the fragile blooms that fought their way through the highland soil. She never spoke of her past to her neighbors, who knew her only as a kind, quiet woman who loved birds and kept to herself. The immense weight of her secret, the double life she had led, was a burden she carried alone until the very end. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 94, her obituary in the local paper made no mention of Paris, of the resistance, or of the countless lives she saved. It was, perhaps, the final and most perfect cover of her remarkable life. And so, the untold story finds its voice, rising from the classified ashes of history to claim its rightful place. Elara Voss, the scholar, the countess, the spy, the refugee, and the cartographer, a woman of many names and a single, unshakable purpose. Her life is a mosaic of incredible bravery and profound sacrifice, a narrative thread woven into the very fabric of our shared history. The spy who outsmarted the Nazis was more than just an operative. She was a beacon, proving that even in the darkest of times, one person, armed with nothing but their intellect and an indomitable will, can strike a blow for liberty that echoes through the generations. Her story is finally told, a silent salute to a most fearless woman.